Welcome to episode 3 of Beyond the Bench with Nick Ingram. Today we have a special guest. Bobby Plump joins us. He's basically the real-life version of Jimmy Chitwood if you've seen the movie Hoosiers. He was the star guard for Milan High School who hit the game-winning shot to win the state championship over much larger schools. He'd go on to play college basketball at Butler University and spend some time in the professional ranks as well. He broke a lot of records during his time, especially at Butler. He broke the single game scoring record as well as the career scoring record and also the free throw career record, which still stands today. His story and the story of his teammates are what the 1984 hit movie Hoosiers is loosely based off. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I'm excited to take you beyond the bench. Have you experienced foot or ankle pain? If so, you're not alone. Millions of Americans suffer from foot and ankle problems every year. Ansert Foot and Ankle is here to help. Dr. Ansert and his team have been serving Louisville and Southern Indiana for 26 years. Ansert Foot and Ankle offers comprehensive services, including diabetic foot care, sports injuries and trauma, heel pain and plantar fasciitis, foot and ankle surgery, custom orthotics, and more. Ansert Foot and Ankle is located at 2315 Green Valley Road in New Albany, Indiana. You can reach them at 812-949-1002. Today we have Mr. Bobby Plump here with us. Thanks for joining me today, and I'm excited to get into this one.
Well, I'm glad to be here. It's nice to be remembered after all those years.
Yeah, 71 years ago, your team won the state championship. But I think what a lot of people don't know is you went to Milan High School. It was the year before that you guys actually made it to the Final Four. So I think that's left out of a lot of people's stories, that you guys were in the Final Four, and then the next year you won it all.
That is correct. And even more remarkable than that, Milan had never won a game in the regional in the history of our school. We had been there 4 times. I think it was 32, 35, 36, and 46, always defeated the first game. We had a coach our sophomore year that was maybe 50 years old. Herman Grinstead was his name. And the superintendent, we had the best year Milan had ever had, didn't win the sectional. I was home with the flu. But the superintendent didn't like him, and they fired him a month after the sectional. And a gentleman by the name of Marvin Wood, who was only 24 years old, came in. He changed our whole system. He had never played. Woody's the reason we won. Now, you have to have some talent or you're not going to win the tournament. But I'm going to give you a couple examples and going back to 53. So here's a new coach coming in after the older coach was fired. And he had never played his own defense. He went to Butler. Mr. Hinkle didn't believe in his own, would never play it. We had never played as a man-to-man except trying to catch up sometime. Most coaches say my way or the highway. We worked on that man-to-man constantly in practice. The first 2 games, Woody decided, we won him, but Woody decided we couldn't play that man-to-man very well. What did he do? He went to our 8th grade coach and asked Mark Combs to come up and teach the kids his own defense. Mark said no. Woody said no. Why? He said the kids already know it. Woody said, I don't. Would you come up and teach me this own defense? So Mark Combs is in all of our pictures. In that zone, Woody also brought full court trap zone, a half court trap zone that John Wooden used pretty well at UCLA. And the last game of the season in 1953, we're playing Osgood, a county rivalry. Woody did not want us to get hurt. So he said, here's what we're going to do. He said, Bob, you go to center court with the ball. Kraft, 10-second line out of bounds line. Engel, 10-second line out of bounds line. White that corner, Tripp that corner. Now, does that sound like the 4-corner offense that you thought Dean Smith invented at North Carolina? Woody put that in. It worked so well. We beat him 37-15. First game of the regional, we played a team called Knightstown Memorial, not the high school, Knightstown Memorial. It's a home for orphan children. They had us down 9 points with 1 minute and 48 seconds to go. Our fans are leaving. They've seen this before. Defeated, gone. We stole the ball 3 straight times, hit a free throw, get within 2 points. We had the ball out of bounds. When we threw the ball in, the timer forgot to start the clock. People are screaming or throwing things on the floor. Finally, the officials saw it, went over to the scorer's bench, maybe for half a minute or so. We thought it was 10 minutes. We're in the huddle wondering what's going on. They never took any time off the clock. With 0 showing on the clock, Ray Kraft, a substitute that year, hit a bucket, tied the game. First overtime, it's tied. Second overtime back then was called sudden death. The first 2 points wins. You could hit a free throw. They hit a free throw. You hit a free throw. You're the winner. I hit 2 free throws. We won the first game in the history of Milan High School in the regional. 4 fans. Now, they came in suit and tie back then. 4 fans showered with us.
That's crazy.
So there's a double overtime. 53 was like the movie. Double overtime, 2 points at night. The afternoon game of the Sweet 16, we won in overtime. That night, we set a record, and it still stands. David Halberstam, I didn't know statistics, but David Halberstam, the Pulitzer Prize writer, was writing an article for a national magazine, and they had me look up some statistics. We held Shelbyville to 2 field goals for the whole game, but they were 2 for 51. That percentage isn't very good.
No.
And then we got beat in the afternoon game. But having never won a game in the regional in the history school, this 24-year-old took us to the Final Four, as you said. And then in 54, we had a 15-point winning margin in the tournament by the time we hit Muncie Central. We used the 4-corner offense as an offensive weapon. In the finals of the Sweet 16, we played Crispus Attucks, who had a guy that you might remember. His name was Oscar Robertson. We were ahead of them, 25-20 at half. We went into the 4-corner, and shortly into the 4th quarter, we're behind. I'm sorry, that's Muncie. Anyway, we were ahead 25-20. We go into the 4th quarter. We beat them 65-52, which was the worst defeat Ray Crew ever had in a tournament game. So we expanded the lead with the 4th quarter against Gersmar, who was in the final game and lost by 1 point the year before. We were ahead 35-30 at half. Go into the 4th quarter. We beat them 60-48. Those 65 points against Attucks was the 3rd highest in all of the Sweet 16 games. The 2 that beat it, Crispus Attucks beat Columbus in the afternoon, 67-66. So, and by the way, against Muncie Central, it was the worst game I played in 2 years of tournament play. The previous 3 games, I had 71 total points. I had 28 against Attucks, 26 against Gersmar. I only had 6 points in that final game until I made the last 4. But when you hit the winning bucket, nobody says anything about a bad game, right?
Yeah, no one's going to remember those 6 points. All that everyone remembers is the final shot. So from what I hear is, whenever you guys won that state tournament and the next day you headed back to Milan, the celebrations were just unreal. Some people say there was 20 to 30,000 people there. So what was that like during those celebrations?
We were a bunch of naive kids, Nick. We thought, look what happens when you win a state tournament. Ain't this fun? Actually, there was an 18-mile-long caravan behind us, and we didn't go by school bus, by the way, to the tournaments like most teams do. We had a GM dealer in Milan that had Cadillac, Buick, Chevrolet, Pontiac, and truck. He gave us Buicks for the semi-state and Cadillacs for the state tournament. So we're driving our Cadillacs back. We get to Sunman, which is 9 miles from Milan, and two cars. There's an 18-mile-long caravan behind us. Two cars behind me. A friend of mine told his wife, he's going to walk. You drive. Walking the 9 miles, he beat her to Milan while she's driving the car because people were stacked going into Milan. And you're right, the state police were there to protect the town because they closed all businesses and went to the tournament. And they estimated between 30 and 40,000 people came. They came from 4 surrounding states. Plus, at the 70th banquet that we had for our team, I met a lady from New Mexico, and she tried to get into town. So the celebration was pretty big, but we just thought that was normal.
Yeah, for sure. So you also won Indiana Mr. Basketball, and that's an extremely high honor to get. What was that like whenever you found out that you had won that award?
Well, I'll tell you what. When I graduated from high school, I never had a telephone, so they had to call. I didn't live in Milan. Only 3 players lived in Milan. I lived in a little town called Pierceville. On a good day, we might have 100 people in our town. They had to call Schroeder's store in Pierceville and get me, Roger, who played on the team. I'm in the garden working with my dad. He came over and got me. I had to call him back, collect, to find out I was Mr. Basketball. And that was a great honor. It happened to be, I also won the Treasurer Award that year. And that was the first player ever to win a state championship, a Treasurer Award, and be Mr. Basketball. And in the single class system, there are only 2 others. Dave Colescott from Marion in the 70s, and a guy named Damon Bailey in the 90s. So there are only 3 of us that have those 3 honors in the single class system.
So then after your time at Milan, you went to Butler University. I can see you wearing the Bulldog gear there. Were you recruited heavily out of high school? What was that like during the time? I mean, I know it's a lot different now. So how did that look in high school for you?
Well, I was recruited by a lot of schools. I turned down full scholarship, summertime jobs for IU, Purdue, Michigan State, Cincinnati, Tennessee, and about 20 other colleges. But the recruitment was done basically by letters. I visited IU, Purdue, Michigan State. I didn't visit the others. They were too big for me. And I knew the Hinkle system because Woody graduated from there, and I figured I could play for Mr. Hinkle. So I chose Butler, and Butler did not have scholarships at that time. All the others, I had a full ride. At Michigan State, I'd probably made half as much money in the summertime as my dad made all year. Dad only made $3,200 a year. So if you go to Butler Fieldhouse, well, Hinkle Fieldhouse now, before you go into to the seats, right in the middle there's a big poster about the movie Hoosiers, and Mr. Hinkle's recruiting letter is there. It's handwritten on his private stationery, and I'll paraphrase it. It goes basically like this. Dear Bob, congratulations to you and your teammates on winning the state tournament. I got about as big a kick out of it as you did. Paragraph. Now make up your mind to come to Butler University. We have a bunch of swell kids here, and I have a man interested in you financially. Paragraph. Now call me when you want to come up. Sincerely, Paul D. Tony Hinkle. P.S. If any of the other guys want to come, bring them along. Pretty sophisticated recruiting letter, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's nothing like it would be today, for sure.
Oh, no. And so I chose Butler. I met the man. he put money in the bursar's office. The reason Butler didn't have scholarships was because the Indianapolis Olympians, an NBA team, was formed in 1950. They had I can't think of their name, Alex Groza and Ralph Beard on the team. And in 53, they were banned from the NBA for shaving points at the University of Kentucky. They won the NCAA tournament in 47-48. They didn't lose games, but they kept the gamblers in money. So they barred them, and they used Butler Fieldhouse as their home field. The president said, that's it. We're de-emphasizing athletics. That's why this gentleman put money in the bursar's office, and they paid my expenses. We had it, Ray Kraft and I went to Butler, and we had a tuition job for our tuition. We had to sweep the floor, and that might sound like that's a bad deal, but back then you couldn't get into the sectional, regional, semi-state, and state, and we got in free, and we got to watch all the games. So that was a pretty good deal, and I was able to play the Hinkle system, and I was fortunate enough. I established single game career scoring records. I still have a record at Butler University. I graduated in 58, and until 2011, I had made more free throws at Butler University than any other player, and then Matt Howard broke it. He played in 125 games. I played in 89. But the record is, when I set the single game record of 41 points, I was 12 for 18 from the field and 17 for 17 from the free throw line. And nobody at Butler has made 17 in a row without a miss. So you have to look way down the record, but I'm proud of it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I think, was that against Evansville?
That was against Evansville. You've done a lot of research on this, Nick. I'm impressed.
Thank you. Yeah. I like to do my research, but anyways, you took your Butler team. It was the first NIT. Your team went to the first NIT tournament in school history. And back then that was probably just as big of a deal as the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I guess it was. I didn't know too much. When you're from a little town, you don't get very much news. As I said, didn't have a telephone, never had running water in my life, living in Pierceville, and obviously no TV. It was an experience. I didn't realize it was as big as it was while I was there. That all came later. I didn't realize also I was selected to the East-West All-Star game, 12 from the East, 12 from the West. And to give you an idea of the salaries in the NBA then, 1958, they drafted by regions back then, and I roomed with the #1 draft choice in our region. His offer was $8,000 a year. Teachers were signing for $4,000. And another sidelight, not about Milan, but Bobby Leonard, who graduated from IU in 54, went to the service for 2 years, played in the NBA from 1956 to 1963. His highest salary after 7 years was $13,000.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the times have definitely changed. I mean, now players are making $100 million. It's just crazy.
Yeah, they make that amount a second.
Yeah, for sure. So you would go on to play professionally for the Philadelphia 66ers, and that was
Phillips 66.
Phillips, yeah, sorry. The Phillips 66ers. I read it wrong, but that was in the National Industrial Basketball League. I'll be honest, I don't know what that is. Can you tell me about it?
I didn't know what it was when I played. So it's not unusual you don't know about it. The NBA back then only had 8 teams. The furthest west was Minneapolis, and then St. Louis. Fort Wayne had a team until 56, and then there were Detroit Pistons. There was a team in Rochester and Syracuse, New York, the Knicks, and Philadelphia. Our league consisted of corporations that you work for the company, and played basketball, and it was under the auspices of AAU. We had 9 teams. We had teams in New York. Cleveland was owned by George Steinbrenner. Akron Goodyear, Denver DC Truckers, Seattle Buchanan Bakers, San Francisco Investors, Wichita Vickers, Peoria Caterpillars, and Phillips. Back then, the AAU, the Olympics were controlled by the AAU, and if you won our league, you qualified for the Olympic playoffs. Phillips won it in 1948, what was it? 48, Peoria in 52, Phillips in 56. We won our league in 60, and it was the first year they allowed other than college seniors to play on the college all-star in the Olympic playoffs. The Olympic playoffs had AAU teams, Phillips, the winner of our league, the Army, Navy. The seniors that year were Oscar Robertson and Jerry West. The underclassmen, Walt Bellamy from IU, Terry Dishinger from Purdue, and a big center from California. They beat us 8 points in the opening game, so we didn't get to go to Rome for the Olympics. And I found out later that if you win the Olympic playoffs, you automatically get 5 players. You can have as many as 7. And Phillips had a tradition not only sending the players, but they sent the whole team and the wives to the Olympics. So Janine almost divorced me because we lost that game.
Yeah, I'm sure that's funny. So now
we also let me put another thing aside.
Yeah.
We also we flew by private plane that Phillips owned. The NBA was still traveling by train and charter plane. We did exhibitions for our jobbers throughout the United States. The State Department sent us to Mexico for 4 weeks to do exhibition in Mexico. 2 years later, they sent us to the Middle East 7 weeks to do exhibition basketball. We landed in Greece, went to Cyprus, landed in Amman, Jordan, stayed at the Dead Sea, went to Jerusalem, Damascus, Beirut, and Rome. And the reason I got to Phillips was Mr. Hinkle. They had never seen me play. And back then, Abe Saperstein's calling for the College All-Star Globetrotter game, $100 a game for 18 games. I called Mr. Hinkle and I said, I can make $1,800 playing for the College All-Star. He said, and you had to know Mr. Hinkle. He had fish hooks in his pocket. He never paid for anything. He said, Bob, that's an awful lot of money, but I have an appointment for you at Bartlesville, Oklahoma when you get back with Phillips 66. I had never heard of them. Didn't know they had a team. I fly out there. I shoot for 10 minutes, and the coach said, take a shower. I'm thinking in the shower, my $1,800, I mean, that was a lifetime for me. I come out, and they said, we'd like to hire you. Didn't ask him how much, didn't know what it was. I made $6,000 the first year and got a $75 raise. While we were in the Middle East, I was his assistant coach. This is how Mr. Hinkle was thought of. I said, how in the world did you hire me? Never saw me play, never had a film, shoot for 10 minutes. He said, well, you're showering. I called Lou Wilkie, senior vice president at Phillips, and told him, I said, this Plump kid, he can shoot, and he's fast, but he's awful small. Lou Wilkie said if Mr. Hinkle said he could play, hire him.
That's pretty crazy. So, I mean, it's safe to say that because of basketball, you've got to travel around the world and do things that a lot of people could only really dream about doing.
Not back in those days. I'll tell you how sophisticated we were back in those days. They said we're going to the Middle East. We're going to land in Greece and go down to we got the globe out, turned around trying to find out where in the heck the Middle East was.
That's pretty wild. So let's segment it over now to the movie. So what role did you play in the movie? Like when they were filming it, were you there? Did you have any ties to that? Or was it kind of just wrote and then you watched it in the theater?
Well, what I had to do with the movie is I hit the last shot. That's a basic thing. And I didn't have anything else to do with the movie other than they asked me to show them where the last shot was taken from. And I met Gene Hackman while they were filming the last shot at Butler Fieldhouse, then Hinkle now. They're shooting the last shot on one end. Gene Hackman is standing under the basket by himself on the other end. I walked down and I said, "Mr. Hackman, I'm Bobby Plump. He said, "Get over here." He said, "This is what this movie's all about." He said, "I know Bill Jordan, one of your teammates." And I said, "You know Bill?" "Yeah." He said, "Bill Jordan, who was a junior when we won, has been in Hollywood since 1963. He's been on Broadway and Bye Bye Birdie, and I'll be darned if Gene Hackman didn't know him." So we shared a few stories of that. They asked Marvin Wood, our coach at Milan, to be in the kind of showing them what was going on with Milan, but he turned it down because he was coaching the girls' team at St. Mary's at Notre Dame and didn't think he could take time out for it. So there wasn't anything other than the last shot and me meeting Gene Hackman, who was kind of a thrill.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Gene Hackman, he tragically passed away recently, but
yes, he did.
It's still very cool that you were able to have that moment with him. I'm sure that was a really neat experience.
They really didn't think that movie was going to go. It took them 5 years to get somebody to put up enough money to make the movie. And they released it in 1986 in limited theaters in Indiana. Gene Hackman and Dennis Hopper thought it might be the last movie they ever made. They said basketball movies don't succeed. One of the reasons that it succeeded was it wasn't just about basketball. It was about second chances and opportunities in life. And Gene Hackman, Dennis Hopper, pretty good actors. So they were surprised when it became worldwide and being voted in, I think, 2020 or something, a #1 movie, sports movie ever. And to give you an idea how worldwide this went, 4 or 5 years ago, I got 3 letters from kids in Paris, France, asking for my autograph.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can really say about that. That's just insane. So did you think it, I mean, I know you said they didn't think it'd go very, very far. Did you think the movie would have the success that it did, or were you kind of just like, well, we'll just see how it plays out?
You know, I saw Roger Schroeder's daughter was working for the film industry here in Indianapolis, and she got a script, the first script that was out. They changed it a little bit, and I read that script. It's a good thing I wasn't a producer, because I thought, how in the world are people going to be excited about this? You know, you just saw the comments and things. But when I saw the movie, Angelo Pizzo, the writer and co-producer, grew up in Bloomington, David Anspaugh in Decatur, Indiana, and they invited us to a special viewing just 2 days before the movie was released in Indianapolis. I was asked by the Indianapolis Star to write an article. Back then I had a coat and tie, and I had a little thing I was writing on. I wrote 2 sentences and became so engrossed in the movie, I forgot to write anything there. So I had to do the story from memory. Angelo called me aside and he said, "Bob, what do you think?" I said, "Man, you nailed it. That's the greatest movie I think I've ever seen." He said, "Did we get the last 18 seconds right?" I said, "You got it." Yeah, I didn't think reading it was so far from what the excitement was from the movie itself. So once I saw it, I thought it was a great movie.
So in the movie, there's the famous scene, and you at the end of the game, Jimmy Chitwood, which is obviously portrayed for you, he said, "I'll make it." He's going to make the shot. Now, I'm going to assume that didn't happen. Am I right on that?
You are correct. That did not happen. I'll tell you what did happen in the huddle. I made the mistake in the huddle, but you know, the score tied 30-30, and in the huddle, Woody said, okay, here's what we're going to do. He said, Kraft, you take it out and throw it to Bob, me. And he said, Bob, you just dribble around. There's 18 seconds to go. You just dribble around until maybe 5 or 6 seconds and shoot. If you can, shoot with enough time left. In case you miss it, maybe we can tip it in. Gene White, our starting center, who was all 5'11", by the way, said, well, Woody, if we're going to do that, why don't we get on the left side and clear that out? Woody said, that's a good idea. That's what we'll do. And I said, let's go over it again. He said, Kraft, take it out and throw it to Bob. Guess who took the ball out? I did. But when you hit the final shot, nobody says anything about that.
No one remembers.
And just to let you know why the movie was made like it was, I've been on speaking things with Angelo a number of times, and he always tells the audience, the first thing I learned about making a movie was you had to have controversy. Well, he went to Milan. Gene White, our center, was coaching at Milan at the time, and he was looking for controversy. So he said, Gene, I know you had a coaching change at the end of your sophomore year. The new coach, how was there? No, Gene said, we love Woody. Everybody loved Woody. How about fans? You know, the fans, they love Woody. They loved us. And he said, well, how about players? You get crosswise, dating things. No, Gene said, we never had any of those problems. Angelo walked away and said, how in the world can I make a movie about everybody hugging, loving, and kissing? And that's why he changed it. The original intent was to make it about Milan, but there wasn't enough controversy for him to do it. They thought about it, David and Angelo, when they were fraternity brothers in the 60s at IU, but didn't make any difference. They know it's about Milan, and they did make one heck. I did meet Dennis Hopper also at the 10th anniversary, I think it was, or someplace in there. And I congratulated him being nominated for a Best Supporting Actor. And he said, Bob, I've worked on a lot of movies, and I worked hard on it. This one, easiest movie I ever made. I practiced that role my whole life.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, it's crazy. And it's wild to think that a movie like Hoosiers, I mean, it encompasses what Indiana high school sports are about in a way. I mean, it's the underdog story. Everyone loves it. And whenever you go to Assembly Hall, they have clips of Hoosiers being played. I was just at a sectional game last night commentating, and one of the teams walk out to the theme music from Hoosiers. I mean, it's still just the talk of Indiana basketball.
Yeah, they, one of the other reasons that it succeeded, every player, not just Hickory, but every player on opposing teams were ex-basketball players from the state of Indiana. Only one actor total of all the players was in that movie. Angelo and David said they wanted basketball players acting like actors, not actors acting like basketball players. That helped. But the basic thing of second chances and coming through and having the euphoria of a small town winning the tournament in Indiana, when from 1956 to 1995, in addition to being televised statewide, we drew more than 1 million people to our state tournament every year.
Yeah. And I mean, you've spoken out on class basketball a little bit. I mean, at least whenever they first went to the class system. I just want to know, why do you not like the class system?
Well, we had class basketball before. Now we have multi-class.
Yeah.
Okay. The last year of the single class tournament, IHSAA had a contract with the TV station, $500,000 a year, had 3 years to run. The first year of the multi-class, the last year of the single, we drew something like 840,000 to the tournament in addition to that statewide contract. The first year of the multi-class, it drew 480,000, and it has not been back there since. The TV contract had 2 years to run. the TV company canceled those next 2 years. It doesn't create the excitement that a small school or a mid-sized school, back in the single class tournament, if you beat the favorite in the sectional, it was statewide news. Most people cannot tell you who won this tournament last year. Not one of the four. It has, you're playing the same size schools that you play during the season. It doesn't create the interest that the single class tournament had. Now, it's still a great accomplishment, and I congratulate all the teams and players that can win a state championship. That's a super, it's just excellent, but it doesn't excite the fans like it did before.
Yeah, that's very fair. And there's not the underdog story is taken away in a way.
Yeah, it is, because again, you're playing the same size schools, and sometimes you have to travel a distance for the sectional or the regional more than it used to be. So the fans can't get excited as they were. Well, we played that team twice this year, it's more like a county tourney than a state title. But again, it's a great accomplishment. I take nothing away. I'm proud of them.
Yeah, for sure. So the last thing I want to talk about here is your restaurant, Plump/Shot. It's located in Broad Ripple neighborhood there in Indianapolis, ran by your son. When did that restaurant open up, and what does it mean to you?
Well, the restaurant was totally my son's idea. Jonathan is his name. He had been married. He was married to a lady that ran a restaurant bar here in Broad Ripple. It took him 3 years to convince me that we ought to do this. I had no idea about running. I have nothing to do with running the restaurant other than being here and meeting people. But he convinced me that it would be a good idea, and to play on the movie Hoosiers and my career in high school and college. So we opened in June of '95. So it'll be 30 years this June. And we have had so many different people. There have been people from Europe, television people come in and do specials with our restaurant. People have a nice time. It's well behaved. The attendance is great. And, it's unusual for an establishment that's individually owned restaurant bar lasting 30 years. So yeah. Jonathan has done a great job. We just improved everything. I had a financial planning agency that I retired from November 1st. I figured 63 years was long enough to do that. It's a block north of here. And Jonathan built me an office at the restaurant upstairs, and that's where I'm talking to you from now. We just repainted it. I haven't got the pictures up yet, but we were USA Today about 4 or 5 years ago, selected 5 different districts for the #1 sandwich in that district. They selected Plump/Shot breaded tenderloin as a #1 sandwich in this whole district. So we've had some excellent cooks, and people they just like it, and it's been a lot of fun. Something I never dreamed of, obviously. Well, I never dreamed of a lot of things that have happened to me, but it's been a good life, and I'm so thankful that people do remember. When you're 88 years old, that's a long time. But it's great that you remembered, and I'm so pleased to do this podcast with you. And I'm going to say it again. You have done your research. I've talked with a lot of people, and I've done podcasts, Zooms, and so forth. You're up on your history.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate it, and I'd love to get up to the restaurant sometime. We'll have to come up there and meet you in person and have a meal. That'd be a great time.
Well, you got my phone number. Just give me a call anytime and I'll meet you here and I'll tell you a few more stories.
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you for your time today. I hope this is a really good interview. I hope you had a lot of fun reliving some of those stories and just an incredible adventure that you've been on.
Nick, I enjoyed it tremendously talking with you and I wish you the best.